Welcome back for another flight computer video. Today this is our final video on the mil-spec 5414 feature set. We've looked at all the features that were introduced in that specification, except for one, which is the density altitude window, and we'll take a look at that today. So on the screen we have two computers. This is the one we're talking about, the Dalton Dead Reckoning Computer from the Weems System of Navigation. This device dates to roughly 1950, and we know that because it has some of the features of the 5415 mil-spec on it, as opposed to the first generation of the device, which did not. And also, we know the end dating because in the mid-1950s, the Weems System of Navigation merged with Jeppesen. So we first saw this device over here in our video on the AN 5835. And we said that this was in 1943 that the E-6B had gone to an all-plastic design. This we talked about as a civilian model. It didn't have the glow-in-the-dark painting on it, but all the other features were present. And so if you have one of these devices, you can check, do you have a first generation or second generation based on the presence of this density altitude window. Let's compare the two devices. So if we flip to the back side, they are the same. They have the same scales, but we do have an extra conversion scale here on the lower bezel for centigrade to Fahrenheit, and we'll need that here in just a second. On the front of the device, we have a slightly different spelling of computer versus computer. And what else? We have slightly different construction for the nubs that move the slide. If we look at this device, if we align the scales so that the two logarithmic scales are aligned, we can see that this device divides sort of symmetrically around the axis here, where we've got altitude computations over here, and we've got airspeed computations over here. But when we look at the second generation, you can tell that it's on a slant, and we'd say, what is the focal feature here when those scales are aligned? And it's very clear, it's the density altitude window. This was a big feature to add to a flight computer. So let's start by doing a density altitude problem. So given a pressure altitude of 2,000 feet, and an outside air temperature of 95 degrees Fahrenheit, what's our density altitude? So we look at the device, we set our pressure altitude here, which is in thousands of feet, so we're looking for 2,000, roughly right here, and then our air temperature is, it's in centigrade. Well, it's a good thing that we're able to convert 95 degrees Fahrenheit into centigrade on the back of the device. So 95 Fahrenheit is 35 centigrade, so we can go ahead and mark that here, and then we can find our answer. So 2,000 feet pressure altitude, and it's a hot day, so there's 35 degrees Celsius, and that gives us, did I do that right? 30, I set that under 1,000. 35 degrees Celsius is there, and that gives us a density altitude of almost 5,000 feet. We'll call it 4,900 feet. So if we are going flying today, we have to know that the air that goes over our wing is not like the normal air we would find at 2,000 feet. It's more like the air that we would find at 5,000 feet, and we have to consider our performance accordingly. Okay, what other features do we have here? So on the first generation Dalton Dead Reckoning Computer, we just had conversion arrows for nautical miles, statute miles, and kilometers. Whereas here on the newer device, we have many different conversion arrows. So we'll start with some of these new conversions. We have volume. So down here on the opposite side of the device, we have arrows to convert US gallons into imperial gallons, and also over here into liters, which we'll take a look at. So the procedure here is to take the one on the slide. So we want to convert 1 gallon into these other units. We align the one with our arrow, and then here we can read our imperial gallons as roughly 8.33 imperial gallons. And in terms of liters, without changing the slide, we come over here and read by liters. And 1 gallon is 3.8 liters. So that's a volume conversion. We can also convert short distances like meters to feet. So we've got a meter gauge marking right here. Again, we'll take our 1 or our unit index and set it right there on meters. And then we can read how many feet in a meter right here, which is 3.1, 2, 2.5, say 2.8. So 1 meter is 3.28 feet. And perhaps my favorite new conversion that's on here is a way of converting speed into feet per second. So we've had these gauge markings before to convert nautical miles to statute miles. So here we've got 100 knots is 115 statute miles. That's been on all the Dalton flight computers. Later, kilometers were added. So if we convert 100 knots into kilometers, it's 185 kilometers per hour. And feet per second is the new kid on the block here, and that's going to be 169 feet per second. So if you need feet per second, it now lives on the flight computer. You don't have to remember that formula. There's actually another really nice conversion from statute miles to nautical miles, which is centered on the speed index. So if you knew that you were doing, say, 90, let's say you were doing 90 knots, you could set your speed index here on 90 knots and you convert it to statute miles by just following along on the slide and coming up here to about 104 nautical miles. And vice versa, if you knew your speed in statute miles, you could then set your speed there in statute miles and read how many nautical miles it was here backwards on the slide at 90 knots. So some very nice conversions built right into the device, so you don't have to remember those. Okay, there's one more feature that I want to talk about on this second generation flight computer that I think was really useful, or if it's not useful, it's at least cool that it made it there, and it's almost hidden. So Dalton has a computer here to figure out how long it's going to take to fly certain distances in minutes. But on the inner side of this scale, we also have what we call an hour scale, which takes our minutes and does a modulo 60 operation to them, which is how we think of time. We don't think of, it's going to take me 100 minutes to get, where I need to go. We think, okay, it's going to take 1 hour and 40 minutes. And this hour scale on previous versions of the computer stopped it, if we follow along here, 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, and that was it. So you could read a conversion of minutes into hours up to 10 hours. But on this new second generation device, that continues. So we have 10 hours, 11 hours, 12 hours, 13 hours, 14, 15, 16, all the way up to 24 hours. So how many minutes are in 24 hours? Well, it's 1,440 minutes. I don't know about you, but I like to think of my days in terms of hours rather than in minutes. So it's nice that I can do all those calculations right here on the flight computer. And as a fun example of where we might use that, we can think about the longest commercial flight right now, which goes from Singapore to New York. It's roughly 8,300 nautical miles, and it takes about 19 hours. So let's find the average speed that an airplane would use on that route, knowing how long it is and how long it takes to fly. So we would find 8,300 nautical miles here on the outside of the scale. And across from that, we would put our time, 19 hours. Get these two aligned. I think I mentioned this, but these extended hours here are here with 2 dashes, 21, 22, 23. So anyways, 8,300 nautical miles, 19 hours, and the average speed in order to fly that route would be 437 nautical miles per hour. 437 nautical miles is how fast you would fly for 19 hours, which is a very long time to be in an airplane. Okay, so that closes out our mini-series here on the evolution of Philip Dalton's E-6B. I wanted to end with the civilian model for a specific reason, which is that even after Philip Dalton's death in 1941, this device continued to evolve. And I really do appreciate and respect that the Weems System of Navigation continued to honor the inventor by not only keeping the copyright on the device, but also naming the device after him, the Dalton Dead Reckoning Computer. So there were other ideas in flight computers, And if you're interested in some of the other designs and ideas that were out there for Dead Reckoning computers, check back on this channel for our upcoming videos on other ideas. Thanks for watching. If you've been watching this entire series, well, thank you very much. And we'll hope to see you in a future video where we cover some of the other flight computers.